Lincoln Theater was a renovated movie space, built in the teens, and had over the years been a successful movie theater, and then a porno house, and then abandoned. Michael Tilson Thomas met Ted Arison through a mutual friend, and Michael had a dream about this middle ground, this education space between formal education and professional life. And Ted was captivated by the idea. So Ted bought the Lincoln Theater and renovated it. It became the home of the New World Symphony. On the second and third floor there were some practice areas that had been offices before that, and offices for the staff. It was relatively small, but it served its purpose. It was the original home and just right for that sort of bootstrap operation. By the time I arrived, Michael's dream was beginning to expand, and we could see that there was far more to this education work than he had even imagined in the early days, and that little Lincoln Theater was never going to carry us. So part of my charge when I arrived here was to work with Michael to help imagine the future, to restart, if you will, the New World Symphony, or certainly to give it a second life. So we spent 3 years planning and talking and programming, trying to answer the fundamental question: what does a musician need to know in the year 2030 or 2040 or even 2050? What's the future of the art form, and what skills and sensibilities will a musician need when they get to that place? And then what exercises will they need to go through? What will be the exercises that will give them those skills and sensibilities across 35 weeks of an educational curriculum? Michael comes to us 3 times a year. He's with us 10 weeks over the course of our 35-week educational curriculum. And it was a beautiful cadence of activity. We would plan with Michael, he would go away, we would think it through ourselves, restate it. He'd come back, we'd look at it again, and we refined it and refined it and refined it. And we used the 35-week schedule to understand ourselves. So if these were the end goals, what would we do in week 1 and week 2 and week 3? And even inside those weeks, what was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, leading to performances on the weekend? It proved to be a really wonderful way to understand ourselves. So after 3 years, we finally felt like we had the courage to even ask the question about architect. And I said to Michael, it is the moment when we've got to form the short list. It is time for the beauty contest. We had never spoken of this before, and he smiled and he said, well, what do you think about Frank Gehry? I said, well, I think that's a great idea. He said, well, he and I have known each other for a very long time. We picked up the phone, we called the Gehry studios, Frank happened to be there. We told him what we had in mind, and was he interested? And he said, yes, I'm very interested. We said, we'll be there. We hung up the phone, scheduled a meeting, off we went. It was Michael's relationship with Frank that caused all of this to be so very close and so very quick. We didn't have to go through that crazy process of what about this architect and what about that architect. We could tell that Frank understood. First of all, he's a music lover. He goes to concerts all the time. He also does have this lifelong relationship with Michael, so it was so natural and so easy, and it was also quite efficient. So we began at that point the design work based on the program. And Frank said in the second meeting, he said, guys, he said, understand me, the harder you push me, the better the building will be. And I remember riding the plane back after that meeting and thinking, I'm going to push Frank Gehry? Doesn't seem logical. And in fact, he invited us so often, and so it was so clear to us that we had to come forward, that by the 3rd and the 4th meeting, we were into this incredible dialogue about the future of the art form. So what you see in this building, the design of this building, is based on those hard-headed conversations. Is it A or is it B? And if it's A, what does that mean 40 years from now? And if it's B, what does that mean 40 years from now? It was an incredibly rich time for all of us. The design was finished. We went through the bidding process. We had between our staff and our trustees, we had a group, we called ourselves the core group. I can't remember why. The core group was half trustees, half staff. There were 8 of us in total. We met every other Wednesday morning for 7 years. None of us missed a meeting. Given the schedules of the trustees, who were all very busy, in their own professions, at the very top of their professions, incredible demands on their time, and us running a program that was already in place but trying to get to this building, it was incredible that we managed to do that. The result of all of the planning and all of that coordination and some very smart guys, the general contractors, we managed to bring this building in on time and on budget. Took us 3 years, almost to the day, and we opened it in January of 2011. The process was incredible. It demanded everything of us. We had to be practical, we had to be dreamers, we had to be both at the same time. We had to understand ourselves, we had to understand the fellows, we had to understand the community, we had to understand the larger world of classical music and the very specific world of orchestral life. All of that was in play all the time. Meanwhile, we were at the very front end of the digital age. As I look back now, I'm dumbstruck by how lucky we were. If we had designed this building 10 years before, it would not have any of this digital involvement or digital capability or digital invitation. We just caught it right. So what you see here is one of the early imaginings of the digital future, the artistic digital future, and we were just stupid lucky.